All right, so the first one we're going to look at today or learn how to do today is the thrown slab. The first thing I want you to note is that you want to cut off about 2 finger widths of clay. Write that down. So I found this is about the right size that you need for your mugs. So just with my block sideways, I'm just going to measure about 2 finger widths. I'm just going to slice that off. So for the thrown slab technique, what you're going to do is you're going to hold your hands over the top like you're a little bunny. Everybody do it now so you remember how to hold it. And you're going to just hold your hand over the top of your slab. And when you go to throw it, you don't want to just throw it down, but you also want to do a little pull towards you. What would happen if I did just smack this straight down on the table? It would stick. So by throwing it down with a little pull towards me, not only am I preventing it from sticking, but I'm also going to be stretching out the clay. So go ahead and watch. Do you see how it's now starting to stretch? Now I know that I want a long skinny slab for my mug, but if I wanted a wider slab, what would I do? Yeah, I would just rotate it and throw it that way. Every time you throw it, go ahead and just flip it over, write that down. And all I do is I keep throwing this slab until it's the thickness that I want. That's it. That's a thrown slab. The next option, we do the same thing. How many finger widths do I cut off? The next option, I'm going to start by throwing my slab. Now, before I move on, what might be some of the disadvantages to throwing a slab? Yeah, it's inconsistent. So if you're trying to make something like a mug, you might not want to do the throne, but when we did like the animal masks, thrown slabs were just fine. Okay. So you want to know what method is best for what you're making. Since we want both of these mugs to be consistent, you might want to do a method that's going to prove to be consistent for you. So I'm still going to throw this out a little bit, because if I tried to squeeze this through the slab roller, what would happen? Yeah, it just wouldn't really work. You'd be trying to crank that thing and it just gets all piled up and jammed up. So I'm still going to throw this slab, and I want to throw it to about the thickness of my middle finger. Write that down. Why do I want to leave this a little bit on the thicker side? I see students who, I'm just going to tear a piece off so I can kind of demonstrate to you, where they keep throwing their slab and they just keep throwing it until it's paper thin. And then what does it even matter if you roll that through the slab roller? It's not going to do anything. So you want to leave it a little bit thicker. So with my slab, I'm now ready to roll it through the slab roller. So because I want it long and skinny, I'm going to sandwich it between 2 pieces of fabric. I just want to make sure it is set at 1/4 of an inch. Now for the mugs, you want it slightly under 1/4 of an inch. And I've checked down here and it is set. So then I'm just going to roll the fabric through the slab roller. And you kind of want to make sure that your fabric is straight on top so you don't get any ridges. If you have a little extra at the end, just tear it off rather than trying to go through. It just means you have too much clay, and that's okay. And you'll find that you have a nice even 1/4 of an inch slab. To do a hand-thrown slab, what do you think I need to do next? Yes, so I'm going to cut off 2 inches. And I'm going to throw it just like I have for all the other slabs. And I want to throw it. You want to throw it until it's about the same thickness as what you'd roll through the slab roller. So I have 2 sticks that say 1/4 of an inch on the side, and I'm going to place them either side. Be sure you get the right measurement because they're all different size sticks. You want to make sure to have a piece of fabric down. What's going to happen if I don't have a piece of fabric down? Using a rolling pin, I can then just roll the slab until it no longer moves. I know it's at that 1/4 of an inch thickness. So then I'm ready to use this. If you're using a texture mat, like I want to use this fish scale one, you're going to just place the texture mat. You've rolled your slab at about 1/4 of an inch, and you're just going to place the texture mat over your slab using a rolling pin. You're just going to apply an even pressure and roll across. Ta-da! Now you have your texture. Okay, so that's one way in which you can do it. And then you would use this for your build. Because it's the soft slab, I could then cut it to shape. Remind me what shape I'm doing? Like a rainbow. I've got to cut it to an arc. And then I can then place it around my mold, right? And I would build from there. What do I need to be concerned about though, right? If I have a joint and I'm trying to blend the joint, what's going to happen to the texture right here? Yeah, so think about that. With your design element, you might put something over that. You might put the handle at that spot to hide it. You're going to want to consider that, but you will be blending out some textures. That's just kind of the nature of it. You could, if you really want to, go back in and just carve the fish scales in that spot, but it's up to you how you approach it. You do want to consider how to make it look good. All right, the other way that I want to show you, again, this is all before I've actually built the mug. So the other technique I want to show you, again, before you've actually built the mug, so if you notice, I've kind of cut it along the shape of the rainbow. I'm going to cut each side. And then it's simply a case of just taking my stamps of choice and just stamping into the slab. But what are you noticing about the slab as I'm stamping? Yeah, it's spreading out. So the reason why I wanted to highlight that if you cut your shape first, you're going to have to still trim it down because it alters the shape slightly. I also want you to be careful because if you stamp too hard, then you have a risk of going all the way through your slab, right? So you want to stamp hard enough in which you can see the textures. But you don't want to stamp too hard to where you go all the way through. All right. So now that I've added my impressed textures, I can go back through my notes, right? I'd wrap this in newspaper. I'd roll this around. I'd trim it to the size that I need, and so on. Now, what do you think you're going to do for your additive textures? Do you add them at this stage, do you think, or would you add them once your mug is built? What you've got to be careful of is if you try and stamp when the mug, let me show you on this guy, if you try to stamp while your mug is built, you have a risk of it caving in, even if you support the outside. You really want the flat surface of the table to help support you. I also recommend making sure that if you do stamp any letters in, that you really try to do that before you wrap it around your mug. So if I want to have my name on there, I've got to think ahead and realize that if I want it to be kind of on the side away from the seam, then I'd need it to be somewhat central in my slab. No, other people have to use them. But I'm not even done, Miss Mallory. What should I do? Don't worry. Take it out. If you're not even ready to start attaching, all you need to do is just carefully tent your slab on a bat and wrap it up with plastic.